The first thing we're going to review is databases feature filtering and conditional formatting. We talked about this in the earlier training, but a filter allows you to look for certain information. In this example, we want to filter, and maybe we want to see among these columns that are available who has Wednesdays off. That'd be the day off. So with my top row, anywhere my top row clicked, I'm going to come up to data, click on the filter, and you will notice along my column headings, each one has a drop down arrow. When I click on one of those drop downs, you will see all the choices or values within that column. Everything is selected. In this example, you will see the days of the week. I'm going to unselect that and just click on Wednesday and hit OK. We can see the employees that have Wednesdays off. To take it one step further, maybe I want to see Wednesdays off and those that work in building number 2. So under location, select building 2, and that filters it down. Coming back up to my data ribbon and clicking on filter again will restore my worksheet to normal. So the next example is how to use an advanced filter. And for the sake of this workshop here, I'm going to click on the advanced filter tab on the bottom of my worksheet of the available tabs. And this worksheet simply has the rental cars by make, model, doors, transmission type, if they allow smoking, etc., and prices. And down here I just made some criteria. I want to see Ford and Chevys that are 4 doors. Pretty straightforward. As with the other exercise with auto filter, this is a filter. It's an advanced filter, so I'm going to my data tab. I'm going to select advanced filter. And by default, it clicks the range of cells where it sees the most data. It is then going to ask, where is my criteria? The criteria I selected right here was make and doors. And I got to that by clicking on these cells here. Lastly, I want to copy this, my results, down to this area and say OK. And you'll see that all Fords and Chevys from this top list that are 4 doors appear there. To do that one more time, let's just delete these here. And let's take the criteria out. I'm going to make the criteria Pontiac and Chrysler. Actually, there's not many Chryslers on this. Let's see Pontiac and Dodge. And I want to see Pontiacs and Dodges with 4 doors, if they exist. So again, data, advanced filter, selects my area. Here's my range. And then I want the items to be filtered down here. And you'll see that the Pontiacs, there's only 2 Pontiacs with 4 doors. If I look at my list here, I can see there's one with 2, but these are the only 2 that's 4 doors. None of the Dodges here have 4 doors. They have 5 because they are minivans. That is a quick advanced filter. Okay, the last thing we're going to show real briefly is conditional formatting. And conditional formatting is just if you want a certain thing to be a certain color. So let's just take a look at our rates column here. These are our rates column. I'm going to highlight the rates column. For those of you following along on the handout, it's on page 2. And if I click on conditional formatting, I have highlight cells rules. And I want cells, I want to see cars that cost more than $19.95 to be formatted. And by default, you'll see here, $19.95 with light red fill with dark red text. And there you go. Simple conditional formatting. Good or bad? I don't know. Do you have time for it? It's totally your call, but that's conditional formatting. Moving along on page 2, bottom of page 2, working with charts. Excel is really powerful with charts, and you can really make them look the way you'd like to. I'm now on the charting tab, third tab along the bottom, and I'm simply going to highlight cell A3. I'm going to hold on my mouse with clicking and let go on B8. So you'll see I have salesperson and week 1 highlighted. Next, I want to click on insert. I'm now on page 3 of the handout. And maybe I want to do a pie chart. And by default, it'll pop up a pie chart on the same sheet in which I am working on. Now, this is all fine and well. If you look along the top here, you'll see the design layout. You have a bunch of different designs that you can click on and make a difference. You also have a move a chart location. I can move that either on the tab I'm on or make it its own tab. For the sake of the exercise, I'm going to leave it where it is, okay? So back to where we were. Kind of really think that this doesn't tell me much. So I'm going to click on layout. And if you get to the layout tab, I'm still selected on the table. And I have the ability to put a title here anywhere I want. And it already has one, so I'm just going to click in here. I'm going to say week 1 sales figures. Notice it has each person here. Being that I'm on the layout tab, I can have a legend or not. Do I need one? I don't know. Doesn't matter. Just leave it for now. Data labels. Do I want labels on my data? Well, we can put data labels if we want. All right. Quick glance on my eye, I can see L Carey did the most sales. But I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking, you know something? I really don't like this type of pie chart to represent the sales figures. I'd like to rather have a column chart. So back on design, I'm going to click change chart type. I get quite a few selections here. I want a column chart. And maybe we'll make it a little pretty here. I'll click OK. And, a little better, right? Again, I have a different design. But back on layout, week 1 sales figures, axes titles as the names, as well as the sales figures along the top. Data labels. Do I want data labels? Yeah, I guess I could. But since those data labels are there, I really don't need a legend, do I? So the legend's turned off, and I can tell by looking here that L. Carey had the most sales. That's not the best kind of chart. Let's go with a normal one. Look a little better? Maybe so, maybe not. It's just a normal one without 3D. If I take a look at these, maybe I don't want those data labels on there. Maybe I want a table. I can take a look here. Okay. Here's how each person did. Good, bad? Yeah, totally your call. Let's take a look and compare 4 weeks. Cell A3, click and hold, to E8, and let go. That is the range of data. I'm going to insert, column chart, and as you will see, this one appears in here. Let's move it down a little bit. And we can see how each person did per week. Well, don't I want to compare them by week? So let's switch the row and column. Oh, so now I can see by week who did what. And if I take a quick look, L. Carey did the most sales in week 1. Look at week 4, H. James did. You can also take a look that K. Dunn was kind of low, but little by little, that person did better. On the layout tab, I can add a chart title. Sales comparisons, weeks 1 to 4. And just like we had done before, we can have a table on the bottom there. And with the table on the bottom there, we want, we don't even have to have this. And with the data, we can have the legend keys on there. Pretty cool. Data table, show legend keys. So we know R. Smith is blue on every example. Pretty cool. Tables are very simple to use in Excel. It can really show your data well. So the next thing we'll learn how to do is how to use a pivot table. And looking at this sheet we have in front of us, if we hit Control and End, we can see that we have 7,160 rows of data, which represents about 7,160 students in our district. The data we're looking at, we have a student number, last name, first name, their grade, what school they attend, their EL status, their scaled score on the California Standards Test for English Language Arts last year, also known as the STAR test, and the CST result. So if they got a 419, that results in a 5, which we know is advanced. What we want to do is we might want to look at, how many EL students scored a certain grade. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit Control, Shift, and End, and that's going to highlight the data that we want to take a look at. So all of our data is highlighted. The next step is to click on the Insert ribbon, and we're going to insert a pivot table. And in doing so, it just makes sure we have the right range selected and choose where you want the pivot table report to be placed. And we're say in a new worksheet, and you receive this information. Excuse me. So first thing, we want to do it by student number. Now, by default, Microsoft Excel wants to give you the sum of all those student numbers. That's why you look like a 5 trillion number here. But over here on values, let me move this over, on values, we want value settings, and we want a count of those cells. We don't want to sum up, we want to count because we know every student has a unique ID number. So we have 7,159 students we're going to be looking at here. And we want to take a look at their EL status. Pop up here in the row labels, and we can see that 1,605 students exited LEP, which we call those RFEP, Redesignated Fully English Proficient. LEP means they are still English learners. So of the 7,159 students in our district that we're looking at, 1,013 are English learners. Not LEP means they came in fully English proficient. Initially fully English proficient. They might be speaking a different language at home, but they speak English just fine. 578 students. And then 3,963 students who are what we call English only. Pretty cool. Maybe we want to see this by school. I'm going to click on school. I'll move school right over here. And I can see Carmont High School has 267 students at its school that exited English services, so they're RFEP'd. They have 104 that are still English learners, 239 that are not LEP, and 1,378 that we would assume are English only. And you can see the different numbers per site, with Sequoia and Woodside having the highest number of English learners and students who have exited those services. Let's say we want to see maybe only students at these schools that are, let's move this over a little bit here for you. Maybe just your LEP and exit LEP. So we know they are English learners or they've been redesignated fully English proficient. So that helps us drill it down. So we know 267 students at Carmont exited services and 104, are still getting, still receiving English learner services. At Redwood, see how there's 60 students exited? I can actually double click that column. That will give me a list of each of the students from Redwood who exited the services. Go back to my EL status and ELA tab. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to my pivot table. Now, maybe, I'll take this filter off. Maybe I want to know which students, their ELA result, we'll leave it here, was, leave it the way it was, at each level. So we can look at exit LEP, which are also known as the RFEP students, and how they did on each exam. For the sake of this, we might want to take a look at just certain students. For example, I might just want to see how our English learners did on the STAR exam. So here are students still designated English learners, 104 at Carlmont, and out of the 104, 30 of them scored a 1 on the California Standards Test, which is not very good. It means they're scoring far below basic. 3 of them, however, of our Carlmont students, scored a 5, which is advanced. So these are the 3 students that are designated English learners, but they also score advanced. So it could be criteria to add that program. Let's take a look at Sequoia real quick. Just as an example, 2. That means they scored below basic on the STAR exam. 99 of them, right here, scored a 2. So we know that group of students still needs some work. This could really help us drill down on the exact students who need to really be focused in on more. So let's go through a pivot table one more time. You highlight the data you like, you insert, and you select pivot table. The range is already selected. Let's go into a new worksheet. We always want to do student number, and we want it to be a count of student number. And maybe we want to see just their CST results by school. And we can see how students did on the CSTs. So 57, let's use a different school for a change. Woodside High School, 60 students scored 1, which is far below basic. I double click, I can see those 60 students that scored far below basic. I can even go on this tab now and drill down further and see, okay, which 10th graders, the 10th grade now, last year they're 9th, scored far below basic. Interesting. Probably more data than you'll ever want to know, but needed by program planners in the district. Great way to look at data far, far differently. The last thing we're going to look at is what they call a vector lookup. And vector lookups are on page 5 of the handout. So if you look at the tab titled EL Status plus ELA, you'll see student, last name, first name, their EL status, etc., etc. This is the same tab we were using in the pivot table exercise. Sometimes we pull data from different sources and we need to merge it. And we merge it using something called a vector lookup. With the EL status and ELA tab, to the right of it, you have the math results tab. So you'll see student numbers and names and just how which math exam they took, their scale score, and their result. And we want to put it onto this sheet. We know that this sheet here, EL status and ELA, has every student in the district, whereas the math results are only going to have kids who actually have math results. With that being said, we want to take from the math tab, we want to take these 3 columns. For the time being, I'm going to click and hold and highlight the 3 column headings and do a Control-C for copy. Come back to the EL status and simply paste them right here. So I'll readjust this column. So CST Math, and CST Math Scale Score, and CST Math Results. So in this cell here, I need to know how Louisa Aaron did on her math. She does have to be my first student here. But I'm not going to sit here and copy back and forth and go from tab to tab to figure out what's really going on. So what we are going to do is we're simply going to use a formula called a vector lookup. Now in the vector lookup, it's referencing a cell, and it's referencing as unique. In this case, we're going to reference student numbers. You could do this by employee ID numbers and other data that is unique. But since we know every student has his or her own student number, we'll use that. See how we couldn't use last names because you have 5 Abarcas in here. A lot of repeated last names. So in this cell, I2, we want to do a formula called a vector lookup. It's a V equals V lookup, and we want to do it based on what's in A2. We're going to look up that as our first number, do a comma. Then we're going to do a math result, and we want to take this whole spreadsheet, and we know we first want to know the name of the exam, which is in cell, or in column E. So I'm going to select everything, and hit comma. And then since E is the 5th letter of the alphabet, I'll type a 5, comma, and the formula wants the word false and close the parentheses. If you come back here, you'll see that this formula automatically produced summative math. Pretty cool. Let's try it here, the CST math scale. So again, equals V lookup, oops, A2, math results tab, everything. This time we're in column F, so that's the 6th letter of the alphabet. False. 417. Is that correct so far? Yeah, summative math 417. Now the tricky thing is we don't want these numbers changing when we copy them. We always want to reference column 5 and the A column as we go through this stuff. And we have to do something called a string. And within our formula bar, all we do is put a $sign in front of the 1 and in front of the other number that's separated by the colon. And that will hold that number constant. So if I drag and drop, you will see the tests that these students took are coming over. Edgar Abarca has no A and NA because Edgar Abarca does not appear on my math results tab. Pretty cool. On this cell here, again, I want to isolate these numbers. And now that they're isolated, I'm able to pull down and drag and drop. I'm also going to go ahead and move it over here. And I want column A. And since the result is in column 7, I now have my formula built I can drag down. That's how you do a vector lookup. Interesting, algebra spelled incorrectly there, huh?